Okay, I think we can start. So welcome everyone to today's webinar, the role of peatlands in ASEAN and Vietnam. And I'm really excited to share with you what we have for you today. So just briefly, a quick introduction. My name is Mariam Ghani and I'm the Stakeholder Engagement and Communications Manager at Tropical Rainforest Conservation and Research Center, also known as TRCRC. And I'm also part of the Coalition of People for Peat. So of course, I want to say Xin Chao, which is hello, and welcome everyone to today's webinar. And this webinar is hosted by People for Peat, as well as in collaboration with Nong Lam University. And this is our first time hosting a hybrid event where we have both a virtual audience from across the world and a physical audience participating in the lecture hall of Nong Lam University. So I'd like to give everyone a warm welcome. So as I mentioned, our topic for today is the role of peatlands in ASEAN with a specific focus on Vietnam. And before I go any further, I'd like to highlight that today's event is being conducted in 2 languages, English as well as Vietnamese. So to use our interpretation function, please make sure to select the globe icon at the bottom of your screen, the one highlighted here, and select your language, whether that's English or Vietnamese. I make sure that you do select one or the other. And at any point during the webinar, if you have any questions, you can ask those questions in the chat box, or during the Q&A, if you raise your hand, you can ask your question in your preferred language and our kind interpreters will translate for you. So just a few basic guidelines for today's webinar, especially for those joining us virtually. Please rename yourself in Zoom to the following format: your name followed by your organization. And throughout the webinar today, please keep your microphone muted throughout the presentation. Keep your video off as well, just to save on bandwidth. And at any point in time, if you have a question or if you have anything to ask us as the organizers, feel free to put it in the chat box. And then the agenda for today is that we will have a quick introduction to People for Peat, followed by a presentation by our very own Dr. Eli Nur Nirmala Sari, who's our peatland restoration technical expert. And then we'll have our guest lecture from Professor Nghia, followed by a Q&A. So during all of these presentations, do jot down your questions and we'll be able to answer them along with our panel of speakers at the end. So without further ado, let me show you a little video about our program, People for Peat. So yeah, enjoy.
Special activities with real action in the ground, together with the local peoples and supported by government and the corporation, and it will be one of the best solutions.
My hope for the ASEAN peatlands is that there will be more awareness amongst the general public, amongst the government, amongst the private parties, about the very important role peatlands play in regulating the climate, in maintaining biodiversity, and in providing an income for local and regional communities.
To maintain peatland ecosystem, it is essential to build capacity of local communities, especially in restoration and wise use of peat forest.
In the future, we hope to see more businesses on peatlands to operate sustainably.
Let's help protect our peat forest together, because we need to set a better future for our children.
Great, so that gives you a little bit of an introduction to our program, People for Peat. And I also want to highlight that our program is under the EU SUPA program, which stands for the Sustainable Use of Peatlands in ASEAN. And we are representing People for Peat. So we are technically component 2. And our focus is on working with non-state actors to mainstream data, build business and investment capacity, as well as do advocacy and outreach. Both of these components are funded by the European Union, and our project timeframe is 3 years, and we're reaching the end of our project. So our goal ultimately is to reduce fires and haze in the ASEAN region, which I know is a pretty big goal. So, you know, it wouldn't be good if we didn't have people like you joining us for our webinars and helping us to increase our engagement and awareness. So as I mentioned, the People for Peat, it is a coalition, and it is made up of 3 organizations: the World Resources Institute, Yayasan Initiative Dagang Hijau, both based in Jakarta, Indonesia. And then the last one is my organization, Tropical Rainforest Conservation and Research Center, and we are based in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. And so some of the challenges of managing peatlands in Southeast Asia is really that there is a lack of reliable data and information. So our project aims to collect more of that and make that accessible. And then there's also a strong need for more business solutions that are sustainable on peatlands specifically. And then beyond that, we of course need funding for those peatland areas. And you know, the real key aspect of today's event is also increasing awareness as well as capacity about peatlands in Southeast Asia. So that's kind of like the challenges that we're facing and how we're addressing them. So far, to date, in the last 2 years, we've had a lot of different engagements with the public, with researchers, with the business community, all based on our 3 different pillars. So we had a conference of parties, we've had, you know, research proposals and currently ongoing research into peatlands, as well as for pillar 2, which is our business and investment pillar. We have been running a business accelerator program that is concluding by the end of this year. And lastly, for outreach and advocacy, our team has been reaching out strongly on social media, growing our reach through there, as well as building capacity through different workshops such as this one, or webinars such as this one, as well as our regional peat symposium, which we have a 2022 version coming up. So do stay tuned for that. So yeah, as I mentioned, you know, we're all very aware of the COVID-19 pandemic, so we've had to pivot virtually, and we managed to achieve a lot of these different activities through virtual means. Of course, you know, it'd be ideal to have it in person. So this is our first pilot program of doing it in a hybrid fashion. So do let us know what you think. And if there's any feedback, we're always welcome to hear it. But so far we've engaged over 700 people just virtually, which is quite a feat. And I'm quite proud to say our team has been able to do that. And now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, which is none other than Dr. Eli, who is also part of People for Peat. She works at the World Resources Institute of Indonesia, and she acts as People for Peat's Peatland Restoration Technical Expert. And she comes with over 16 years of working experience with advanced expertise in peatland management. She has experience in peatland-related issue policies, peatland-related climate change mitigation and adaptation, and she obtained her master's degree from the Faculty of Agriculture at Hokkaido University. And she got her PhD from the Graduate School of Environmental Science, also in Hokkaido University. So as I mentioned, she's now with WRI Indonesia as the Peatland Restoration Technical Expert, where she is conducting research on peatland issues, analyzing the current issues facing sustainable peatland management, particularly in Southeast Asia. So we're very lucky to have Dr. Eli and her time today. And she's going to talk to us a little bit about peat definitions, peat formations, and peat distribution in Vietnam. So Dr. Eli, over to you.
Thank you, Mariam Ghani. Can I share my screen, please? Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm Eli from WRI Indonesia. I hope that all of you are doing well during this pandemic. And on this opportunity, I would like to share information related to peatland issue in Southeast Asia. But please note that what I would like to share is basically general information about the peatland in Southeast Asia. And Professor Nghia later on will talk about the particular peatland in Vietnam. So what is the peatland? Peatland is accumulation of organic matter. So if we used to see the mineral soil surrounding us, so peatland, peat soil is totally different from mineral soil. So peat soil consists of mostly organic matters. It has the very unique characteristic, and the peatland in Southeast Asia is used to lay over between two water bodies, for example, between river and river, or between river and sea. So if you can see here in the screen, mostly peatland or peat area has a peat dome. Peat dome is the deepest area of the peatland area, and of course that peat soil consists of huge or high organic matter, but also consists of mostly water. How about the definition of peatland? Well, in Southeast Asia, there is no agreed definition of peatland, but fortunately in Indonesia, we have official peatland definition. So in Indonesia, for example, peatland is the area which consists of more than 65% of organic matters, with the depth more than 50 centimeters. That's the official peatland definition in Indonesia. But how about in other countries? For example, in Cambodia, or in Laos, PDR, or in Myanmar. So yeah, there is no agreed definition for peatland in those three countries, but they more adopt the from FAO's definition. So they are using the peat definition as a histosol. So that's so they are using the FAO's definition for the peat soil. But how about Vietnam? Yeah, until now there is no agreed peatland definition in Vietnam, and also as far as I know, until now that there is no Vietnam not yet involved in any peatland particular peatland project. So I think that Professor Nghia will talk more about this after this. I would like to share how the peat is formed, especially in Southeast. I'll take a sample in Southeast Asia. So we can imagine in long back ago, hundreds or thousand years ago, there was a big lake, but this lake is a shallow lake, and that's why the condition is waterlogged, and also surrounding there was dense vegetation, and when the vegetation just fell down and then the vegetation dead, the vegetation was not able to be decomposed perfectly because the condition is waterlogged in anaerobic condition. So there is less of oxygen, less of decomposer microorganism. That is why then the accumulated dead or fallen trees cannot be decomposed perfectly, and that is why those organic matters from vegetation is accumulated year by year for hundreds years, even for 1,000 years. So that is how the peat form, especially in Southeast Asia. And of course, these the characteristic of peatland in Southeast Asia as tropical countries, or we call it as tropical peatlands, is different from peatland in, let's say, in Europe, because we, of course, the most thing that differentiate between the tropical peatland and peatland in Europe is the organic matters. That in tropical peatlands, the organic matters came from the trees, or it's woody. But in temperate zones in Europe, for example, it's come formed from grasses or shrub, something like that. And well, based on the formation history, that actually the main component for peat formation is vegetation and water. Because of those two components, there are vegetation and water. That is why then the peat is formed. So the three main components of peat ecosystem or peatland ecosystem are water, and then plants, and then peat soil itself. So those three components actually have the connection, or they interrelated one and another. So when one component changes, then it will affect two other components. So for example, naturally the peatland ecosystem is in a wet condition. I mean, like in waterlogged condition. There is vegetation, and then below the vegetation, the condition is wet. But once we destroy this ecosystem, for example, by cutting the trees, and then it will affect on the higher evaporation from the surface of peatland. It will cause the peatland becoming dry, mean loss of water, and then it will affect to other components. Means it will affect the balance of peat ecosystem itself. So those three components is very important: water, plants, and peat itself in a peat ecosystem. And this is the sample of the peat soil in Indonesia. And we see here the peat soil is totally different from mineral soil. So peat soil used to have the blackish color, but it's not necessarily should be blackish color, because, for example, if we in some area which is already degraded, then the peat soil is becoming the color is changing to the lighter color. It's not anymore blackish. And also in some area in South Asia, for example, in the Philippines, that we can find also that the color of the peat soil is not blackish. This is a sample, and this is very soft, because it consists of high organic matter. So if we go to the field and then take the peat soil and then we squeeze it, mostly the organic matters will remain in our hand. This is typically of the peat soil. How about the role of the peatland ecosystem? Well, the peatland ecosystem has play a very important role, especially because the peatland ecosystem has several benefit in services. For example, peatland ecosystem has a function as a provisioning services. For example, we can get the food from fruits from the peat swamp forest, and we can get fish. We can do fishing in a peat swamp forest, for example, and of course we can use the water in the river in a peatland ecosystem. For example, we can get the fiber or medicine from the peatland, and also peatland ecosystem has a regulating services. As I mentioned before, that peat has high organic matters content. So that is why the main role of the peatland ecosystem related to climate change mitigation is because the peatland ecosystem has functioning as carbon storage. And also in the rainy season, for example, due to the existence of the peatland ecosystem, pristine peatland ecosystem, it can avoid the flood or mitigate the flood. And also in the dry season, for example, it can mitigate the drought if the peatland ecosystem is still pristine, but it will be different if the peatland ecosystem is degraded. And also for local communities, we found that most of the peatland area, there are local communities surrounding, and these local communities, they have interaction with the peatland ecosystem, and they got benefit from peatland ecosystem. And for the local communities, of course, the peatland ecosystem has a spiritual value, for example, historical value, aesthetic value, and also peatland ecosystem has support service. We call it a support service because when we let the peatland ecosystem to be intact or pristine, then the peatland ecosystem has a role in hydrological cycle. If we don't disturb the peatland ecosystem, it will the peat ecosystem will keep the balance of the ecosystem itself, including for the local communities surrounding. And the other important things is if we let the peatland ecosystem to be intact or pristine, then the peat ecosystem itself will form the peat soil. So with its vegetation, which is still pristine and intact, it will naturally form the accumulation of peat. So that is why like peatland or peat ecosystem is very important. And especially for the communities, I mentioned before that the peatland ecosystem also provide the livelihoods for local communities. For example, local communities, they used to utilize the the plants, taking the non-timber forest products such as the fruits, or also like they got the honey from wild honeybee in the forest. And also in Vietnam, there is communities who utilize the kobang for woven crafts. It is also similar with Indonesia, the similar species, but Indonesia we call it as purun. So we make the woven craft from purun. It's typical grass. And also in the Philippines, as I know, they have the similar grass also, and they call it as tikok. And also in Thailand, they have the similar also, and they call it as krajut. So in peatland, there are these species actually abundant in peatland, and most of the time that we don't need to cultivate it because we can get this material easily. And then for example, in Indonesia, that the communities, they make the woven crafts from purun or kobang in Vietnam, and the crafts, the woven crafts, they export it to other countries outside Indonesia. And also peatland ecosystem as a livelihoods, we can utilize the peatland ecosystem to develop the ecotourism, because by developing the ecotourism, of course, that we don't need to destroy actually the ecosystem, but by that we will keep the ecosystem intact, and also at the same time we can conserve the peatland, but at the same time also that we can get the economic value from ecotourism. And of course, other things is for the communities, they they can get the for example, the fish, like they can cultivate aquaculture in the peatland. Peat soil has the very unique characteristic. It's different from mineral soil because of it has a high organic matter content. Then the peat also have the peat has high carbon content also. So we call the peatland ecosystem as carbon storage because it has also very high carbon content. And because of the high content of the organic matter, so the peatland also has high water holding capacity. It can absorb water very well. But then at the same time, also that peat soil has low bearing capacity. And peatland has a very low pH. That is why the characteristic of peatland is acid. Basically, it is from we can say that the peatland is acid or strongly acid. So we sometimes found in the ground in the field that the pH of peatland can reach to 2, which is normal of pH is 7, around 6 to 7, but in peatland we sometimes found the pH is 2, and because of that also the peatland has a low soil fertility or lack of nutrient. And there are several types of peatland in Southeast Asia. There is a mangrove peatlands, floating peatlands, which is found also in Myanmar, for example. There is a lakeshore peatlands and swamp peatlands. There's also a buried peatlands for example, in Lao PDR. And we found also upland peatlands in the mountainous area. We found it also in Indonesia in some areas, also upland peatlands. So there are very many types of peatlands, but all of those peatlands are important, especially for as its function as carbon storage. That is why we need to avoid the peatland degradation because peatland has a very important role. But unfortunately, even until now, we can find degraded peatland area in Southeast Asia in all countries. And generally, the cause of the peatland degradation in South Asia because of land conversion. Of course, if we convert the peat swamp forest into other use, for example, for agriculture or plantation, we need to cut the trees, and mostly like we need to build the canal also because usually for planting the plantation species, the plantation species is a dry land species. Meanwhile, the peatland is a wetland, part of the wetland. So if we need to use the peatland for the plantation, means that we need to drain the peatland. That's actually the mostly cause of the peatland degradation in Southeast Asia because of the peat drainage, and also because of the peat drainage, then the peatland become dry, prone to fires, and when the peat fires occurs, it will degrade the peatland in a very fast, because then we will lose the organic matters of the peatland due to the peat fires. And in Vietnam also there is issue about the peat extraction in Vietnam, and I think this is this is a serious issue related to the peatland management. So until now, we have several meetings with the expert from Vietnam and also with the peatland expert, and we come up with the the findings about the threats in peatlands in Vietnam is because of the burning and drainage of peatlands, overexploitation of peatlands, because of the logging, and also the practice of agriculture in peatlands. And yeah, there is inadequate adequate policies, lack of legal framework related to peatland management in Vietnam, and also there is activity of illegal poaching activities in Vietnam. That's the threats of in peatlands in Vietnam that we can find. So the degraded peatland is very serious issue in Southeast Asia countries, and because of the drainage in peatland, it will lead to the peatland degradation. When the peatland degraded because of the drainage, of course that it will give the negative impact to the peatland ecosystem. The peatland ecosystem will lose the biodiversity. It will disturb the ecosystem balance. It will cause also the carbon emission to the atmosphere. So when the peatlands become dry, it will prone to fires. And also the characteristic of peatland will change if it is drained. So the peatland has a characteristic of irreversible drying when it is getting dry, and also with the when the peatland drain, it will cause also the peat subsidence, or the surface of peatland will lower due to the drainage. And related to the irreversible drying, so this is very familiar for the in a peatland issue, that peat soil has the characteristic of irreversible drying. When peat soil in its origin condition, or still in a, for example, let's say it is in a pristine peat swamp forest. So the characteristic of peat soil itself, it can absorb water very well. But when it's becoming dry, and then even if we give, I mean, like if we re-wet it, the characteristic cannot be the same as previous. So when it's becoming dry, of course, then the characteristic will change, and the peat soil will lose its water holding capacity, and it will prone to fires and also prone to soil erosion. So when the peat soil is still in the good condition, it has the characteristic of hydrophilic, or is tending to absorb water very well. But when it's becoming dry because of the drainage, or the peatland is drained, then the peat soil will change into hydrophobic. So from hydrophilic change into hydrophobic. Hydrophobic characteristic is that peat soil is tending to repel the water, so it cannot absorb the water well anymore. So that is why it is very important to keep peatland wet. This is the process of the peatland drainage. So, for example, we can see in this screen that in the intact peat swamp forest, for example, the condition is still good in good condition with a high water table, groundwater table. But once we develop or we build the canal in a peatland, it caused the water groundwater table in a peatland is becoming lower, and then in the surface is becoming dry, and it will cause also the peat subsidence, and also emit the CO2 emission to the atmosphere. Moreover, if the peat fires occur because the peatland is dry, then it will emit much more CO2 emission to the atmosphere. It will destroy the peatland ecosystem, of course, and it will lose the organic matter. So peatland will lose huge amount of organic matters due to the peat fires. And also after the peat fires, due to the peat fires, the peat subsidence rates will high, and due to the peat fires which occurs in the ground. And if the peat fires occurs in peatland, means it is at the end stage, because we lost the organic matters already, we lost the vegetation. It is and the characteristic of peat soil change into hydrophobic, and then we only ashes remains in the peatland area. So it's totally, we can say that it's totally damaged or destroyed, and it's very difficult to restore the peatland where the peat fires occurs already. So when the peatland, okay, thank you. When the peatland degraded, it will cause also the loss of livelihoods option for the communities, because of the unbalanced ecosystem, loss of vegetation, and loss of biodiversity. So how to manage peatland sustainably? If the peatland already dry, so we need to rewet it. If we need to cultivate or utilize the peatland, so we have to consider to doing or conducting, implementing the sustainable peatland utilization. And there are many ways actually to do so. Especially for the peatland which is already degraded or dry, we need to rewet it, because the peat water management is very important. With the good water management means that we keep the peat soil surface remains wet and avoid the CO2 emission, and also avoid the peat fires. So rewetting the degraded peatland is very important. When there is a canal in the peatland, then the rewetting effort that we can do is by building the canal blocking. Or if the canal is not so big, then we can do also the canal backfilling. But canal backfilling, which will be much more costly than the canal blocking activities. Of course, it's not only rewetting, but also rehabilitation of vegetation is very important. So if there is open area in a peatland, we need to rehabilitate with by planting the native species in the peatland, because by planting the vegetation in the open area, it will raise the humidity of the surface of peatland. It will lower temperatures. Of course, it will decrease the evaporation and also decrease the fire risk. So that is why the rehabilitation of vegetation is important to support the rewetting action for peatland restoration. And also we need to choose the native species, because native species can grow well in the wet condition of peatland. And we also vegetation. By planting vegetation, it will restore the ecological condition of peatland. So this is very important. But if we found that there is still pristine peat swamp forest, then we need to conserve it. Strongly recommended not to cut the trees, not to build the canal, or not to drain it, but let's keep it as it is, as a pristine peat swamp forest, because it is very important. So once we destroy the peatland, we will need very long time to restore it again. For example, in Indonesia, for forming 50 to 100 centimeters of peatland, it needs 140 years. This is based on research in Central Kalimantan in Indonesia. But once we destroy it or we drain it or even pit fire occurs, then the peat soil will vanish in very fast, even in weeks or maybe in months. But for forming the peatlands, we need hundreds to thousands of years. So in Vietnam, the peatland area is not in a huge area. Professor Nghia will share it in detail. But compared to Indonesia, for example, Indonesia, we have 13.4 million hectares of peatland, and it is in 8 provinces in Indonesia. But in Vietnam, I think it is most of the peatland, it is located in Mekong, lower Mekong Delta and Mekong Delta, and also the area is about maybe in total is 36,000 hectares only. But even though it is only 36,000, no more than 1 million hectares, peatland is important. So no matter what size of the peatland area, but peatland is important. So we need to protect the peatland, peat swamp forest, and we need to restore the degraded peatland. I think I'm gonna stop there, Madam Ghani, and thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ali. That was really interesting. A couple of the things that you said that really stood out to me was obviously about peatland and its ecosystem services. I'm not sure if that's new to some of our participants, where it not only provides supply, but also climate regulation. It has a lot of cultural significance, as well as all those support services. And another thing that you mentioned as well about the acidic content of peatlands. I remember it's been compared to like the tannins in our tea, right? So that's something I feel like really relatable to a lot of people of, when you drink your tea and you have that a bit of like, not bitterness, but tannic effect and that acidic effect, that's kind of what makes up the components of peat. As well as like the fact that peat becomes irreversibly changed once you drain it from becoming hydrophilic, meaning it loves water, to being hydrophobic, where it doesn't want to absorb water anymore. That's really quite significant. So thank you so much, Dr. Ali. We've got a lot of really good questions already in the chat box. So I'm excited to have you address those during the Q&A. But next, I'd really like to share our next presenter, who is none other than Professor Nguyen Nghia, and he is currently the head of soil microbiology at the Department of Soil Science at the College of Agriculture in Canto University. So his research is in investigating the beneficial microorganisms that form plant growth to promote the functions of biocontrol for soils and plant productions, bioremediation of organic pollutants in soil, organic farms, compost, vermicompost, and recycling of organic waste to new valuable bioproducts for agriculture. So it's a lot of very technical terms, but ultimately his research, it has really far-reaching impacts, especially in the Mekong Delta region, where he was able to share his biological products from his research to be used in green and ecological agriculture. So that then reduces the overuse of agrochemicals, effectively decreasing soil and water contamination, which is so key, as well as increasing then the quality of food, agriculture, environment, and therefore the community. So very exciting to have him with us today. And I should also mention that he is one of the researchers who has been awarded a research grant from People for Peat. So that's also really exciting. So I'd like to welcome Professor Nghia. Over to you. The floor is yours. I'll stop screen sharing and you can share your screen.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Mariam and Dr. Ali, for your very nice overviews and the very basic knowledge about the peatland. So I enjoy very much for your presentation. May I start my presentation, or we need to wait after Dr. Ali answer some question from you?
No, you can go ahead. I will answer it all during the Q&A.
Okay, yeah. Thank you very much for inviting me to join the webinars today. And yeah, as your introductions about my backgrounds, and actually today I don't talk about my backgrounds very much, but because of we are working in the peatland project, so I also have to summarize about the peatland in Vietnam, and especially in the Mekong Delta of Vietnam, where we also have the peatland mainly represented for the Vietnam, because this area we have the biggest area of the peatland. And in my presentation, I also would like to introduce a case of how is the actual situation in the Mekong Delta of Vietnam about the peatland, and how the problem with the peatland now we are facing, and also the strategies for management and recommendation for how the peatland to be managed in a sustainable way. So yeah, first of all, I need to share the.
Yeah, 1 second, Sindhu, do you mind making Professor a co-host, please? If not, what I can do is I can share it as well. Okay, Professor, you should be able to share your screen now.
Okay, thank you. Okay, yeah, so the title is about the peatland in the Mekong Delta of Vietnam. So I come from Cần Thơ University, located in the Mekong area. Cần Thơ is the biggest cities for the Mekong Delta of Vietnam. And yeah, so I think first of all, I would like to introduce the overview about the Vietnams. And yeah, as you can see, the Vietnams is the border countries of Cambodia, Laos, and Myanmar. Our country, we have many kinds of diverse ecosystem, like the lowland, the hill, the densely forested highland. And we also have the two biggest area deltas, like the Red River Delta in the northern part of Vietnam, and we have the Mekong River Delta in the southern part of Vietnam. And in the Red River Delta, we have more populated. This means the people, they living surrounding this area with the dense populations, and also they the rice is the main crops in Red Delta, River Delta, also in the Mekong Delta rivers. And we have the coastal lowland rice planting in the central mountain and in the Mekong Delta of River Delta River. And we also have alluvial deposits. This means that we have the soil should be more fertile than in other places, because every year they get the accumulation of the sediment from the upper parts of the Mekong. And we also have rice growing areas, and this is mainly with the rice. So yeah, and Vietnam is one of the top country producing or export rice productions. And in the delta, in the rice delta, we have river delta. We have comprised just only 1% of global landscape, but we support the over half of the billion of the people. And in the Red River and the Mekong River Delta, these are the really important social ecological system in the national food basket. And of course, in these two Mekong, Delta, We also have like a swarm in the peatland with the permanent or the temporary submerged areas, and including the coastal and the island, and with also the with the peatland, the depth is also varies, from location to the location. And for I cannot move. Yeah.
Is it not working, Professor?
Okay, this is okay. And yeah, now it's about the Mekong Delta of Vietnam. So here we have the 13 provinces of the Mekong Delta with on the map in the right-hand side. And this in the southernmost part of Vietnam, and we have also the downstream ends of the Mekong River. So therefore, we call the Mekong Delta of Vietnam. And yes, I mentioned we have the 12 provinces and one city is Conserve city, is the national city of Vietnam. The areas is about 4.5 million hectares, and the population is about 20 million, is 20% of the Vietnamese population. So it's also quite high, small delta, but it's really we have more people surrounding. With the climates, and we have two seasons, or we have the wet season, like the winter monsoon, south western wind direction from May to November. It's about 90 to 94% of the total rainfall of over the years. And for the dry season, so dry season is from the December to the April. The temperatures around, like the average vary from the 22 Celsius degree to 33 as the highest temperatures in the dry season. The humidity is quite also high, like 78 to 85%. And for the annual rainfall, and we have like 1,400 up to 2,400 millimeters. For the hydrology, we also have flood. It's about 0.3 to 3 meters during the wet season, and also the inland salinity intrusion about 40 to 70 kilometers in the dry season, and especially nowadays. And we don't have much flood in the wet season because the water in the Mekong River is not really much like before. And also that's the reason why in the Mekong Delta we have the impacts of the climate change is now there is very much, and a lot of scientists and a lot of organization, international one, and want to have the research and to have to the project and to how to protect the Mekong Delta of Vietnam as a food source and food security for the world. And yeah, I think I just show very little about the peatland eco services because Dr. Eli's already present very well, and I think I don't want to talk so much about this one. But for the peatland and the climate change, and yeah, as we know that the peatland is very good as ecosystem service for the human, also for the nature, because it's a sink of carbon and waters, and also like organic matters, nutrients, and very good. And from the peatland, we can have many benefits for not only for the nature, but also for the people, they can store the carbon and regulate the water flow, absorb the water very much, and also the preserve biodiversity, and supply the forest production with the non-timbers and also the timber products. And they provide a lot of activity like a space for the culture. And of course, it's also very good like filters, biofilter to absorb many, kind of contaminations, organic pollutant and also inorganic pollutant from the waters, and they can absorb and to fill the water and to make sure that in our raw water we don't have any contamination from the heavy metals or from the organic pollutant from the activities of like industries or agriculture.
Hi, Professor. Sir, 1 second. Your slides are still stuck on the second slide. Is it able to move?
I don't know why. Here it's okay. I move. Can you see?
No, it's still stuck. What I'll do is maybe I'll share screen and then you can just direct me which slide to move to, okay?
Just maybe I stop share and
yeah, I will share.
Share screen. Can you see?
Yes, that's
okay.
fine. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, and as in the picture on the right hand side, it's just you know, a kind of the model with the good management of the peatland, and we have a full biodiversity. Many kinds of wildlife is present in our peatland areas, and we have many kinds like carbon we store it there, and then with the water regimes, it's suitable for keeping the organic substances that is don't release into the air via the decomposition process to produce the carbon dioxide and other you know, greenhouse gases emissions. So this is a good model for peatland management. And for the peatland global at the global scales, and as we mentioned, that like Dr. Eli is mentioned, we have many kinds of the peatland ecologies in the temperate ecosystem and also in the tropicals. And in the tropicals, especially in Southeast Asia, is in the most dominant for peatland distributions. And in Southeast Asia, it's more than 24 million of hectares of peatland discovered, and mainly in the natural forest, and also they provide a lot of, you know, kind of valuable goods and services for the peoples and surrounding, also for from, you know, many other countries surrounding, like timbers and non-timber forest products like fish in the water. Here we also consider the peatland distribution is of course in Indonesia and also in Malaysia and Thailand and other countries like Myanmar and Laos, Cambodia, and of course some small areas in Vietnam. And the peatlands is also have the ability to control the flood and store carbon and regulate the climate. So it means we have to preserve the peatland, and for many benefit for the natures and also for the people. And in Vietnam, the peatland occupied in the small areas and is shrinking now. So it means that the peatland degradation in Vietnam, especially in the Mekong Delta, now we are facing with this problem. And the promotion of sustainable management of the peatland in Southeast Asia, including the Vietnam, is also very significant to the country in the same regions. And I think one thing from the Dr. Eli is mentioned that we lack of, from the Mariam, we lack of the reliable data, and also we lack of many, for a really long time ago in the Mekong Delta, we don't have so much the research, you know, project about the peatland in the Mekong Delta. As far as I remember, 20 years ago, and we had a project from with the Finland country, and we have surveys about the peatland in the Mekong Delta. But so far, we don't have any big project for the peatland study, and that's really pity now. So I hope in the future we also can develop the network for you know, like this project now we are running. For the peatland in Southeast Asia, it's about the peatland areas is about 60% of the tropical peatlands, and If from Indonesia, we are about 21 million hectares, and for the Malaysia is the second largest countries in terms of the peatland area with the 2 million of hectares. And the next one is the Thailand is also relatively a small area of peatland and but accounting for 65,000 hectares, and mainly is concentrated in the southern parts of the countries. And for the Philippines is also about 11,000 hectares. Laos is from 10 to 20 hectares, and Singapore is the peatland area occupied is only like 1 hectare. For Vietnam, we occupy with the peatland occupies only 36,000 hectares, and is scattered through the country. So this means that we have the peatland from the northern part of Vietnam, the central of Vietnam, and also in the southern part of Vietnam. But it's mainly located in the Mekong Delta of Vietnam in U Minh forest, and now we divide into U Minh Thượng and belong to the Nguyen province, and the U Minh Hạ is belong to the Cà Mau province. And so with the areas of these areas is about like 24,000 hectares. Is the largest areas have been selected for the protected areas, and U Minh Thượng and U Minh Hạ National Park is really a reserve national park. This means that we have a lot of forest there, just not for using for agriculture, and also not using for anything, just for the reservations. And some others locations of the peatland we can see from the table, like we have from the northern part of Vietnam, like Lang Sơn, Bắc Ninh, Hà Nam, Ninh Bình. This is the northern part of Vietnam, and Quang Trị, Huế, Bình Định, Đắk Lắk, Lâm Đồng is the central of Vietnam. Varies from the like 5 to 31 hectares. And from Dong Nai, Tây Ninh is another pass over Ho Chi Minh City. It's not belong to the Mekong Delta of Vietnam. But Long An is the province that we also have some peatland areas. It's also included in our projects. And Long An, we have the Đức Huệ, Thanh Hóa, và Thành Hóa is 3 district is also have peatland is over there with about 72 hectares. And for Tiền Giang, we also like 21 hectares. Bến Tre, An Giang is 62, and also Kiên Giang we have like 2,900 hectares. And for Cà Mau, Kiên Giang is, as I mentioned, is with the U Minh Thượng National Park is located here. And for Cà Mau, and we have U Minh Hạ National Park also located here in Cà Mau. And in Cà Mau, we have another park is Vô Giới. It's not included in here, but Vô Giới is also have kinds of peatland areas is there, and it's also the reserve areas. But it's not belong to the national scale. Yeah, it's the maps in the soil group in the Mekong Delta of Vietnam, and we can see that the red normally the red color is mean the acid sulfate soil is also related to the peatland, because Dr. Eli mentioned that in the peatland areas is we have the acidic condition. It means we had a low pH in this location, so it's quite yeah, we have so many spots here as scattered in different locations in the Mekong Delta of Vietnam. The distribution of peatland in the Mekong Delta of Vietnam, and mainly we have the dominate with the peatland, and with the Malaloika forest occurs over about like 12,000 hectares. So in the right hand side, we can see that is normally in the Mekong Delta of Vietnam, and the peatlands with Malaloika, and also swamp areas with the Malaloika, and another ecosystem like we not Melaleuca with many kind of red, grass, and others shrubs just surrounding and also forming a lot of peatland area, especially for the like in Longan province we have both ecosystem, one with the Melaleuca and another one with the grassland or with the wetlands areas. It's a lot of also peatland. For the larger areas of the peatland is have been decided as the protected areas at U Minh Thượng, U Minh Hạ, and also is a national parks of Vietnam. And but for Vô Giới, it's just for only the natural reserve in Cà Mau. For the peat swamp forests play also the critical role in the economic and ecological ecologies of the Mekong Delta, is particularly in providing the timbers and also non-timber products, and are also helping to in the flood control now. But unfortunately, for the peatland in the Mekong Delta of Vietnam, since 2002 and 2002, we have very big fire in the U Minh Thượng National Park. This causes and the thickness of the peatland layer. So it means the peatland layer already reduces and it's about 0.5 to 1.5 meters already destroyed by the fire in at this time, and many areas have been harvested, and therefore and nowadays and after that, and they build a lot of canals surround inside the peatland areas, and to make sure that we don't have with the water, if we have some small species of the peatland can be fired, but also we can protect from others. So it means these techniques and the people they also now apply up to now. It means they build a lot of canal inside the peatland areas, especially for some kinds of the national park like the U Minh Thượng or U Minh Hạ, and also for another park areas to be reserved for the tourist purposes, and yeah, like in An Giang or in Dom Tháp province, we also have a lot of canal inside the peatland areas.
So you have about a little under 10 minutes left, yeah?
Okay, yeah, thank you. And the results of this fire is we have like a lot of the subsidences of the peat, and especially with the canals, it's also in the transition, and we have like the water loss is very much, and therefore they think that this is also not good. The strategies how to manage the peatland in the transitions. For the unnatural maintenance with the high water level and the flood areas of peatland is the most of the year, and also they increase the peatland moisture content, and therefore some kinds of decomposition dynamic also increases, especially for some kinds of methane emission, something like that. And because I think Dr. Eli also mentioned that when we keep the flood is for the peatland for all of the years, on time of the year is a not good strategies. And for the plan of the red and the long swing square angles, it's a pit for they already surveyed, and with the depth of the peatland is about vary from 2 to 5 meters depth, and with the width it's about 100 to 300 meter wide, and 500 to 2,000 meters of the long already found in this area. So it's mean in like Dom Tháp, An Giang, and also Long An province. And the peatland characteristics in these areas is very dark brown and layer with like 40 to 55 meters in the Mekong Delta of Vietnam. And how is the use of the peatland especially in the Mekong Delta of Vietnam? And as we know, that is the peatland in some areas of Vietnam, especially like in the U Minh Thượng, U Minh Hạ is a national park, and they they manage it very well. It's just for, to reserve the ecosystem and to have the nature's habitats for the wildlife and for many purposes, and the benefits for the government and also for the people. However, the peatland in Vietnam is decreases sharply, and with the management have problem because many like human activities, and particularly for drainage and for agriculture. So nowadays, and many company from outside of Vietnam or inside of Vietnam, and they come to the Mekong Delta of Vietnam, and they develop the agriculture. So it means they use the peatland is like in the right hand side. We have the figures, the picture, and we can see that they use the peatland for the agriculture, the organic agriculture. So and also the forests amongst others, and measures of the areas of the peatland in the lower Mekong Delta have been exploited for many purposes, like for fuels, and also for especially for fertilizer. For the extraction of the peatland for fertilizer is already happened for a really long time ago, and they can produce a lot of the materials, the raw materials, and after they harvest it, there's a company, they just try it, and then they reel and mix well, and then they can sell for the other organic fertilizer company, and they can buy it with mass amount of peatland. And also to produce the microorganic fertilizer, it means the carry material for microorganism to apply for any kinds like agriculture and for others ecosystem, and also for humic fertilizer also. And these activities have resulted in many problems, not only to the peatland but also for surrounding ecosystem. Is here there's some activities they use as a substrate for the pot for the ornamental plant trees, and as a humic fertilizer, and also raw materials just for organic fertilizers. Some pictures is here, especially now is some national park like U Minh Thượng, U Minh Hạ, or other reserve park like in Dong Thap in An Giang province. We have many kind of wetland with the Malaloi care, and of course with the peatland is present is there, and they can have many kinds of the tourists, and for attract the tourist people from not only inside Vietnam but also outside from Vietnam. And here we have so many kinds of wildlife like monkey and wild bat, and many kinds of birds is there, and people they can come and they enjoy very much. And this is some activities from the peatland reserve areas. Yes, and how is the main reason for the peatland degradation in the Mekong Delta of Vietnam? And here's the study of the Osakis and others in 2021, and they mentioned that is the main causes to make the peatland in the Mekong Delta of Vietnam to degrade is like the poverty. This means the community surrounding, and they really poor, and the peatland, and they need to use the peatland for their money to live. And with this one is mean they demand for the land for the agriculture's activity. And with this, and they also the peatland conversion into other use like agriculture and peat mining to sell and to produce the food for themselves, and therefore it's also the loss of peatland areas in the Mekong Delta of Vietnam, and the lack of the systematic research and on the peatland, as I mentioned, that it's really nowadays mainly we don't have any research focus on the peatland areas. It's really really pity for the peatland areas in the Mekong Delta of Vietnam. And with this lacking of the resource on the peatland, and we lack of information about the peatland values, and also easily to convert into the agriculture or other purposes of use in the peatland, and that's called the loss of the peatland. And the third reason for this is also the lack of the peatland management capacity. So it means that the somehow like in the national park, and they have very strictly for the management of the peatland, but not in outside of the national park. So it means that in the peatland areas in other places, it can be harvested easily and extracted easily, and therefore it's also we can say that it causes the lack of information about the peatland values, and then maybe is the management is not good. That can be called the peat fires, and also the radiation by the oxidation, also the mineralization of the organic matters in the peatland.
So we're just running low on time, so if you can wrap it up in a little bit, we can move to questions shortly.
Okay. Here, I think it's many sustainable management peatland in Mekong Delta should be recommended. Like it's necessary for the people to participate in close cooperation with the relevant units, the agency, organization, individuals, and to work together. And also the number of activity in conserve and restore the peatland, such as preventing the peatland from the being flooded, and creating the more large area of water reservoir for prevent to the fires, also to strengthening the management of peatland with the participation of the communities, and also communication in the environmental value and natural resources of peatland, and also management capacity of the managers. Here the peatland in the Long An province is located here, and is also in our Long An is also in our projects working together. And they have 3 or 4 locations with the dominant of the peatland like Khoi, Mok Hoa, Thanh Hoa, and Tân Thanh is the 4 biggest areas of peatland in the Long An province. And yeah, and they have 2 ecosystems with the, as I mentioned, the Ras peatland, and another with the Swamp Malaloika contribution. Okay, so that's, I think I finished my presentation now, and thank you very much for your listening, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Nghia. That was really interesting. And that last photo you showed was quite stunning as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I just could highlight from your presentation is that one of the biggest threats to peatlands in Vietnam specifically is peat mining. And it sounds like not just for fertilizer, but also for fuel. So without further ado, I'd like to go quite quickly to our question and answer session. So, yeah, so we've got a bunch of different questions. Thank you so much, all of our participants, for sharing all these questions. And these questions come in for both Dr. Eli as well as Professor Nghia. So maybe we'll just kick it off with the first one, which is kind of a very pertinent question at the moment, which comes from Gemwell or Hemwell, apologies for pronunciation. And this was directed to Dr. Ali, but if Professor Nghia has also a response, please do. In the context of climate change in the Philippines, where we're experiencing the super typhoons every now and then, kindly expound on how peatlands can affect both positively and negatively the hydrological cycle. Dr. Ali, do you want to take this one?
Okay, thank you, MG. Thanks for Jamuel for the question. So I don't think that the super typhoon is directly related to the peatland. I mean, like the portion of the peatland area in the Philippines, I don't think it's much. But so if we talk about the super typhoons, it's more towards the disaster related to climate, right? So yeah, that's I think that's my answer, MG. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Ali. Professor Nghia, any comments from you about these natural disasters and whether or not peatlands can I don't know, help mitigate any of that? Sir, Professor, you're on mute.
I think from the lectures of the Dr. Ellis is mentioned that is the peatland is even we have the small areas of the peatland, but they can reserve and they can store many kinds of like carbon and and also many kinds of order to make sure that they can regulate the climate. So it's mean with the peatland when we don't disturb, it means that they have very good, kind of ecosystem can have a regulate the climate and the weather and to like make sure that we don't produce or we don't destroy very much about the climate and the weather. So they can have, but in our small areas and with the peatland they can have, but it's not very much affect on the negatives and also the positive on the climate change or the type of the disaster as he mentioned, something like this.
Yeah, so we need a holistic, we need to look at it quite holistically, like everything we do has effect, right, with climate change. Thank you both. So the next question, I'm gonna kind of jump around here just to see, but this is an interesting question from Didier of Sirat. So how do you consider the industrial plantations of palm oil trees and fast-growing Australian acacias on these peatlands in Southeast Asia, such as Indonesia and Malaysia? The yield is good and these species seem adaptable to these peatlands. Dr. Eli, I think you might want to take this on.
Okay, thanks MG, and thanks also for Didier. The oil palm and also the acacia is not native of peatlands. So actually the oil palm and also acacia are dryland species. Even if they adaptable to be planted in peatland, it's because when they do the plantation, they drain the peatland. So the wet peatlands, they drain the wet peatlands by building the canals. Once it's dry, and then they start to plant the oil palm and acacia. So there is no we never found the case in a peatland where there is a oil palm plantation or acacia plantation with a high water level, so that the peatland surface is wet. It's never gonna like that. So it is adaptable. It has economic value, but environmentally, I mean, like it's not sustainable for peatland. What happened for the manager, plantation manager, for example, in Indonesia? So they conducted research to find what species can replace the acacia with the same function as to produce pulp materials. And from those research, they found that one of the species is gelang or Melaleuca keju putih in Vietnam, in Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia. I think that we can find it easily because it is a pioneer species. And other species is like in Indonesian local name, we call it as terentang. Terentang is Camnosperma coriaceum, and the scientific name. There's another option also, and also like Sorea species, Sorea belangran, and one other species is keronggang. We call it in local name is keronggang or Cratoxylum arborescens. So those 4 species actually they found those species as replacement for acacia, but still ongoing in their so they are having demonstration plot to know the quality of the yields from those 4 species to replace acacia, because those 4 species can grow well in the moist peatland. So that's I can share, MG. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lee. So another question that comes from Nestor, this is to Dr. Nghia, is what are any allowable activities in peatland for tourism, forestry, and agriculture? I know you gave a couple photos. I think there was some to do with tourism, but do you want to just expand a little bit on that?
So let's see. Okay, so you mean the peat extraction? Mariam is with question now. I'm on the chat box, so I'm.
Yeah, sorry, I'm going through older questions. So this is a question that came in a little bit earlier while you were speaking. And that is about what are the allowable activities on peatlands for tourism, forestry, and agriculture?
Yeah, from my observations and when the people they make the the tour in this like peatland in the reserve areas, and they must keep this mean that the people they can go inside, but actually they don't get many kind of much about the disturbances of the ecosystem. And they have the canals, and with that one they have the boats and can go inside and just to observe the many wildlife is there for the tourist purposes and for the agricultures, and it's just only some small areas like in surrounding with the farmers outside of the reserve area. They also can use for the agriculture, but not for inside, because when we get inside, it's also it means that we destroy very much about the ecosystem of the peatland. But normally in the buffer zone, like in the Uminha, the people they also use the buffer zone for the agricultures. But for the other forestry, of course, inside the forestry should be keep mainly as the activities of these reserve peatland areas. So I don't know if yeah, and many national park and also the reserve area of the peatland with the Malaloika and other, they apply this kind of model for how to manage the peatland in the Mekong Delta in some special area, but not for other, because other they are not really well in the proper management. So they can use for many kinds of like extraction for the fertilizer, for agriculture, for the fuel, for many things others.
So you're saying it's a bit risky to open it up to those kinds of activities, yes. Right? Yeah, I understand. Because once you do, people might take advantage to do all of the other stuff that they shouldn't be doing. And that affects the whole hydrological unit, right?
Yeah.
Thank you so much. So another question, this is coming from our university partners. So currently, as I mentioned, there's a lot of students sitting in the university hall, and they've asked a few questions. So one is, let's see, how can real-time mapping contribute to peat management and protection? Maybe I'll hand that to Dr. Eli first.
Real-time mapping, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course, it will give big contribution to manage peatland sustainably. So, well, I think with the mapping, we can see the change of the peatland distribution itself. Even like with the mapping, real-time mapping, we can see with the remote sensing, we can monitor the moisture of the peatland. So when, of course, but it should be connected with the ground, with the site level. So if we see there is a change, even it is related to vegetation change, land use change, for example, or maybe the moisture change of the peatland, then can be reported to the, I mean, like we need to check on the ground, on the site level, what happened, why it has been changed, especially related to the moisture of the peatland. If it is getting dry, so we need to care. We need to really careful, because when the peatland is becoming dry, there is potential to the peatland to be prone to fire. So, like for example, with the real-time mapping, monitoring, we can we can have the coordination or collaboration with the site level. When it's becoming dry, please just take care of the peatlands. Please to avoid the peat fires. So that's one of the sample. If we can do the real time with telemetry system, peat monitoring, or even peat mapping. Thanks, MG. Over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Eli. And just to mention as well, for the uni students, maybe Han can share the link that Dr. Joe of People for Peat, he shared in our chat box, where he provided some remote sensing maps where you can see approximate peat distributions, and that's available to everyone. So that's a really good resource. There's two maps that we produce for Cambodia that's separate, but C4's online map is a really good resource. So do check those resources out. We're running out of time here, so unfortunately, I'm going to have to wrap up with one maybe last question. And I think this was an interesting one, and this is for Professor Nghia. So this comes from General as well, which is, in contrast to the forest in Vietnam, is carbon trading using peatland as a source or storage already in practice? Yeah, Professor, you're on mute.
I hope that I understood his question correctly. So he mentioned about carbon storage in the peatland, right?
Carbon trading is carbon trading currently in practice? Yeah, for peatlands.
Yeah, and in terms of soil sands, and we like with the carbon and in the peatland, and they have many kinds of peatland. We can divide like the mature peatland, and we have the fresh young peatland, and many kinds of age. It's peat that they have different characteristics of the peatland characteristic, and one of the characteristic of the peatland is the organic matter or organic carbon contained in the peatland is really high, and with kinds of the carbons reserve and also carbon like storage in the peatland is under the lower oxygen, and with water like this, and it's been that the decomposition is also reduces, and then therefore the carbon and they restore in the peatland, and then we also, the people mainly use the carbon source is like organic matter for many purposes, like as I mentioned, like biofertilizer, and also for the pot materials, and also organic matter for the agriculture activities, and of course when we don't have the proper management strategies, and the organic matter can be decomposed very quickly, and then the depth of the peatland will shrink it, and also release a lot of kinds of carbon dioxide and others gases.
So is there any like current trading happening? Because right now that's for example in Malaysia and Indonesia, that's like a big conversation that's happening around carbon trading and businesses and corporations trying to buy carbon.
Yes.
So is that happening in Vietnam as well?
In Vietnam, and actually we don't have too much about the like we always we have the study like how much the CO2 flushes or N2Os or CS4 flushes from the methane, from the peatland, but we don't have too much like research how to keep the peatland, to keep the carbon
in there. Yeah, understand. Great. I hope that answers everyone's questions. I think that's pretty much all the time we have for the Q&A. But thank you both so much for your presentations and for answering all the questions. And thank you so much to our participants as well for sharing all those questions and for your attention today. So let me go back to my slides. All right. So that kind of concludes our event for today. So thank you all so much for participating. And my colleagues are going to share with you a post-event survey, because as I mentioned, this is our first time doing a hybrid event where we had participants from our partner university, Nong Lam in Vietnam, sitting in the hall and listening in to our presenters, as well as, of course, people from all around the world, Southeast Asia mostly, but all around the world. So do give us feedback if you liked it, if you didn't, anything is welcome. And then from there, we will be sending out your certificate of participation. So you fill in the event survey and then we'll send you an e-certificate. So again, thank you so much for participating, and thank you so much to our presenters. We're so lucky to have them with us today. And then lastly, it wouldn't be a People for Peat event if I didn't also promote our social media, because that's where you can see all of our upcoming events. We even have contests with a lot of really good prizes to be won. And we're going to be launching that soon. So definitely stay tuned to our social media. And then we also have a People for Peat newsletter. And that's where we share updates on what's going on in the peat world, and highlighting some of the efforts that are happening on the ground within the community. So please do sign up for that. It's quite interesting, and I promise you will be entertained. And as I mentioned in the chat box, today we will be sharing all of the materials that were shared. We'll be doing that via email. So if you registered, you should be getting an email from us. And we'll also be uploading the recordings to our People for Peat YouTube channel. So if you wanted to rewatch anything or share it with your friends or colleagues, you are welcome to do so. So yes, thank you all so much for your participation and for your attention. We really appreciate it. And you can look forward to our upcoming 2022 symposium, and that's going to be happening in April. And we'll have a variety of different topics to share with you then from other experts as well. But for today, I think that's all. Signing off from People for Peat, as well as from Nang Long University and Kanto University. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Mariam.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Elise, and see you.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you, Miriam.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone at NLU.
Thank you, everyone. From the Philippines with love.
Thanks, MG and team and all.
Thank you.